His wife's scream pulled him up before he was even awake. He was standing in a grey room, no windows, no door he could find. Whispers moved around his head like smoke, close enough to feel, too soft to understand. In the center of the room, a pedestal. On the pedestal, a brass key, still warm. Beside it, a lock with a perfect circular depression and no keyhole anywhere. And then the walls found their words. He was half asleep when he heard them. Bare feet, slow and deliberate on the patio outside. Each step was placed like whoever it was already knew the layout. He opened his eyes. A thin, dark figure sat just beyond the glass, perfectly still, staring straight into the room. Then it moved, and the way it moved is the part he can't explain. Line 4 rang at 2 a.m. The voice on the other end said they were trapped, said they were inches away. Then something in the background slammed hard enough to shake the receiver. He turned to the lobby monitor. The screen flickered. What he saw on that screen, he still isn't sure what it was. Only that it was looking back. The chair was in the kitchen when he came downstairs. Brand new, visibly aged. He had no memory of buying it, no memory of it ever existing, and no explanation for why it already looked old. He opened the front door expecting a sales pitch. The man in the suit smiled, said something about a storage container, and then he was already inside, already sitting on the couch. It was like the invitation had never been his to give. 4 people, 4 rooms, 4 moments where the ordinary stopped cooperating. None of them were ready. And by the end, neither will you. The glass of water on my nightstand was always room temperature by the time I reached for it at 2 in the morning. For a long time, that was the worst thing about my nights. Room temperature water. A lamp that buzzed faintly if you left it on past midnight. The occasional car on Delwood Street, headlights sweeping across the ceiling like a slow metronome. That was the inventory of my discomfort. The full catalogue of things that bothered me in my house. That was the full catalogue of things that bothered me in my retirement, and what I had decided to call my second life. The nightstand itself was nothing special. Oak veneer, 2 drawers, and a brass pull chain lamp from an estate sale. On the top surface, the glass of water, always. A paper bag I rotated every 2 weeks, whether I'd finished it or not. A small ceramic dish shaped like a leaf, glazed green, where I put my watch every night at 9:15. The watch going into the dish was the sound that ended my day. That small ceramic click. That was my period, my full stop. I had been doing this for 4 years by the time the dream started. 4 years in the house on Delwood. 4 years of the same grocery store on Tuesday mornings. The same walk around Kettner Park in the afternoons, and the same cup of chamomile tea at 8:30. I was building a peaceful person out of available materials. Some of the materials were genuine, and some were set dressing. The neighbors knew me as the quiet man in the corner house, Mr. Voss. The one with the nice garden out front. The one who waved but didn't linger. I had a reputation for being pleasant and slightly unreachable, which suited me perfectly. I had earned my unreachability, and I'd paid for it in a currency I don't name out loud. Dinner by 6, something simple. Something that required attention, but not too much of it. The 6 o'clock news, watched for information, not investment. Dishes, then the walk if the weather allowed, then the tea. Then the book, or the attempt at the book, then the watch into the dish, and the lamp clicked off. I slept well, deeply and without incident, for 4 years. I had concluded that the part of my brain responsible for punishment had either forgiven me or given up on me. Then March came, and the dream came with it. The first time, I didn't think anything of it. I was in a hallway, a longer one with the floor the color of old mustard, and fluorescent lights that flickered at the far end. There was a door at the end, closed, and the voice said, "Don't go past the second door." I woke up at 2:17, reached for the water, room temperature, and listened to Delwood Street. A sprinkler system clicked on 2 houses down at 2:20, the way it always did. I thought, this is housekeeping, and I went back to sleep. The second night was identical. Same hallway, same mustard floor, same flickering light, same voice. I woke at 2:19, reached for the water, listened to the sprinkler, and slept. The third night, there was a second instruction. Don't go past the second door. Don't look at what's on the left wall between the first and second door. I woke at 2:22 and I lay there a little longer than usual. I told myself it was stress, which was almost funny because I had no stress. By the end of the first week, I had 4 instructions in the same flat. Record it down. Don't go past the second door. Don't look at what's on the left wall between the first and second door. Don't answer if someone calls your name from behind the third door. Don't stop walking once you've started. I woke one morning and found that I'd already gotten up in the night, already written all 4 instructions. That was the first morning I said it out loud in my kitchen, holding the legal pad. This isn't housekeeping. I want to stop here a second, because I need you to understand who I was before all of this. I am not going to tell you what I did, but I know what I did, and I've learned to distribute that weight across my body. I'm not asking for your absolution, because I stopped asking for that years before I stopped deserving it. When a dream starts giving you rules, you don't think how strange. You think of course it found a system. I bought a proper notebook and I dated each entry. By day 9, there were 6 instructions, and the 5th had arrived on night 7. If you reach the third door, do not touch the handle. The 6th was different. You are being given this information because you already know what is behind the third door. I wrote that one down 3 times, and then I wrote underneath it, do I? The hallway was always the same, and I never moved in the dream. There were 2 doors visible, and the third door was implied, past the second door where the flickering light didn't reach. The dream never asked me to walk, it only ever asked me to listen. On night 11, the voice finished the instructions and then said, "You can go now." I woke so fast I know the glass of water of the nightstand, and I heard it hit the floor. In the dark I said, out loud to no one, "Go where?" On day 11, for the first time, I read the instructions as a complete document. They weren't a list, they were directions for navigating a specific space with a destination deliberately obscured. And the voice had just told me I could go. I stopped sleeping at my usual time and sat in the kitchen past midnight with the notebook open. I started sleeping with the lamp off, but a small plug-in nightlight on, soft amber for children's rooms. I was 63, retired, with a nice garden and a ceramic dish shaped like a leaf, sleeping with a nightlight because I was afraid of what the dark was showing me. You know that feeling when you've convinced yourself something is fine, then your own handwriting proves you wrong? Every margin note I'd written in that notebook was a question. 31 days of entries, one after another. Why the left wall specifically? What's on the left wall? Why can I hear my name through the third door if no one is supposed to be there? Why does the voice know what I know? And why does it say I already know? I had been asking questions for a month and writing none of the answers. I knew what was behind the third door, and the voice was right about that. The third door wasn't in the dream. It was a door I had stood in front of a long time ago. The dream built a hallway around that moment and gave it instructions so I would approach it with rules instead of stumbling. I wrote in the notebook, "The dream isn't a warning about a place. The dream is a warning about a memory." And underneath it, "But warnings don't have rules unless the rules are there to protect you from something." I couldn't get past that question. What is the rule protecting? There are rules that keep dangerous things away from you, and rules that keep you away from dangerous things. I couldn't tell if the hallway was protecting me from what was behind the third door, or protecting what was behind the third door from me. By the end of week 5, the dream had stopped giving me new instructions, and there were 7 rules total. The 7th arrived on night 34. When you reach the third door, you will want to open it. That is not a reason to open it. I wrote it down, and then I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise without writing anything else. That is not a reason to open it. I had been hearing that sentence my whole life. The dream kept saying, "You can go now," every night since night 11. I started leaving the notebook on the kitchen table, open to the current page, as if I was in the middle of something. My Tuesday routine got later and later, and I started skipping the walk around Kettner Park. The chamomile tea sat on the counter some evenings, made and untouched, going cold. The rituals were developing cracks, and I watched the cracks the way you watch a thing you might not want to repair. On Thursday night, 9:15, the watch was in the dish, the lamp was off, and the nightlight threw amber across the nightstand. I sat and read the 7 rules out loud, quietly, in the order they'd been given. I thought about the third door, and the rule that said I would want to open it. I thought about the rule that said wanting was not a reason. And here is where I am, sitting in this particular moment, not moving forward and not moving back. Every night I lie down and the dream comes, and the voice reads me the rules and says, "You can go now." I stand at the near end of the hallway and I do not walk, receiving the information and holding still. I wake at 2 something, reach for room temperature water, and lie in the amber light thinking about a door I haven't opened in this dream. The rules tell me how to walk the hallway safely, but they don't tell me not to walk it. It seems to me the 7th rule exists because walking is the thing I'm supposed to eventually do. But the 7th rule is clear. You will want to open it. That is not a reason. I keep coming back to the word want, because the dream is precise about everything. It chose want deliberately, not need, not must, and that matters. It's possible that need is different, must is different, and that the dream would accept a reason of another kind. Or it means exactly what it says, and I'm doing what I've always done, finding an angle, an interpretation. I've been good at that, and I've had practice. The notebook is on the nightstand now, next to the water glass, next to the ceramic leaf dish. Tonight I will make the tea, I will not drink it, and I will put the watch in the dish at 9:15. I will listen to the click and lie down in the amber light, and wait for the hallway and the mustard floor. And the voice will tell me the rules, Rule 7, in order. Then it will say, "You can go now." And I will have to decide again whether stillness is obedience or whether it's just the oldest thing I know how to do. The watch is already in the dish, the water is already room temperature, and I haven't decided anything yet. The brass key was still warm when he woke up. Not the room, not the sheets, just the key, warm, like something had been holding it. This next one doesn't come from a dream. A man is keeping vigil at a hospital 4 floors below his brother's heart. Somewhere in the small hours he hears footsteps on the patio outside his room. Slow, bare, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that don't hurry because they don't need to. When he finally looks, there are pale feet at the glass. Facing in, not moving. Why aren't they moving? The fold-out cot in room 414 at Mercyvale Medical Center made a sound like a question mark every time I shifted my weight. A low, metallic eh. And by the 4th night, I had stopped hearing it. That's how you know you've been somewhere too long. Not when the bad things stop bothering you, but when the small things stop registering at all. My brother Danny had been on the 6th floor for 11 days before they moved him down to recovery. 6th floor was cardiac. The nurses up there had faces that were pleasant but sealed, like a door that opens inward and you're not getting in. Down here on 4, the faces were looser. The crisis had passed, technically. I'd driven up from Raleigh the night they called. 8 hours, 2 coffees, 1 gas station bathroom that I will not describe. I'd gone home twice since then, once to grab clothes, once because my landlord needed me to sign something, and both times I felt like I was trespassing. Like the person who lived there had gone somewhere and hadn't left a note. Mercyvale sits on the north edge of Harwick, Virginia, a mid-sized hospital that smells, in its recovery wing, like floor wax and the ghost of someone's heated-up soup. Not unpleasant exactly, just relentless. By day 4 I'd stopped smelling it, and by day 8, I think I was it. The room had a window facing west and a sliding glass door on the south wall that opened onto a small exterior patio. Concrete, maybe 12 feet by 8, with 2 plastic chairs bolted to the ground and a half-barrel planter holding something brown and crispy. Beyond it was a low railing and a 3-story drop to the service road. It wasn't a pleasant patio, it just existed so the hospital could say the room has outdoor access. I used the patio twice in the first week. Once to call my mother without Danny hearing, and once because I needed 30 seconds of actual air. After that, I left the vertical blinds closed across the door and forgot the patio existed. The fold-out cot was the other thing. It came out of a cabinet in the wall. I didn't even know it was in there until the night nurse, a woman named Petra with reading glasses on a beaded chain, pulled the cabinet handle and said matter-of-factly, "Here's your accommodation." There was a pause. Then she added, "I'll get you a pillow," in the tone of someone offering a condemned man his last meal. The cot unfolded to about 5 feet 4. I am 5 feet 11. Petra did the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift most nights. She never made a fuss and never made small talk. She'd check in on Danny around midnight, around 3, and again at 6. Her footsteps were a specific sound, soft-soled shoes with a slight drag on the left, and after a few nights I'd started tracking her rounds like a lighthouse. Not because I needed her, but because it was something regular in a place where regular was hard to find. On the 12th night, the second night in recovery, Danny was doing what the doctors called resting comfortably. He was asleep, his numbers were okay, and no one was actively worried about him in that particular moment. He had a tube in his arm and a monitor clipped to his finger that glowed red. When the room was dark enough, you could see that little red light pulse. I'd spent several hours staring at it. Every pulse was him saying, "Still here, still here, still here." Before I folded myself onto the cot that night, I stood at the side of his bed for a minute. He was on his back, mouth slightly open, with the specific unconsciousness of someone on real medication. I fixed the way his hair always did, left side going flat, right side deciding to be independent. And he didn't wake up. "You're annoying," I whispered, which is what I say when I mean the opposite. Then I went to the cot. I want to try to explain what sleep is like in a hospital room, because if you've been there, you already know. And if you haven't, I'm not sure language covers it. It's not sleep, it's a negotiation. You close your eyes and the room keeps going. The monitor beeps its slow, steady talk. The hallway has distant traffic, and the building hums in the back of your teeth. You find a position that's almost okay, stay very still, and let your mind loosen at the edges. And then the cot says, and you're back. I'd gotten maybe 90 minutes the night before, maybe 2 hours the night before that. My body had started doing things on its own, forgetting words mid-sentence, dropping objects, standing in the hallway bathroom staring at the sink for 30 seconds without remembering why I'd come in. I was running on tired that doesn't feel like tired anymore, like your body moved and you're catching up to it. That 12th night, something was different. I lay down on the cot and exhaustion hit all at once, like a door closing. My legs went heavy and my thoughts went soft. I remember thinking distantly, this might actually be sleep. Real sleep. The kind that fixes something. I don't know how long I was under, maybe 40 minutes, maybe less, but I came up out of it all at once, like a hand grabbed my collar. The room was the same. Monitor talking, red light pulsing, Danny breathing slow and audible and steady. Everything was the same, except the vertical blinds over the patio door were moving. Not swaying, not a lazy drift from air conditioning. A slow, deliberate movement, like something on the other side was passing close to it. One blind, then the next, then the next. A ripple moving left to right across the door, as if something walked the glass and each blind registered it. I didn't move. You know that thing your body does when it decides you're not going to move and it doesn't consult you first? That happened. I was on my back on the cot, completely still, and my heart went from a sleep to full sprint in about 2 seconds. I stared at the ceiling and thought very clearly. The blinds moved because of the air conditioning. The vent is right there. That's all that was. The vent was on the opposite wall. I lay there and did not look at the door. I counted tiles in the ceiling and listened to the monitor. I told myself, Petra will come by at 3. It's probably close to 3, and she'll come by, and the hallway light will come in under the door, and everything will be fine. The blinds moved again. Same direction, left to right, the same sequential ripple. One blind catching and releasing, then the next, then the next. Unhurried, like something pacing. I turned my head. And the air felt heavier. The patio door was mostly dark. The blinds were thin, vertical ones, cream-colored, and through the gaps you could see the patio in fragments. The dark concrete, the railing, the black sky beyond. And there was something standing on the other side of the glass. I can tell you what I saw, but I can't tell you what it was. It was tall, taller than the door frame, which meant taller than the door frame, a thing that doesn't make sense, and I understand that. It was darker than the patio behind it, not a shadow, but a darkness with shape and verticality, like a figure my brain read before I could stop it. It wasn't moving. The blinds had stopped moving. It was present, very close to the glass, close enough it would have been touchable. And then, I don't have a better word for this. It became aware that I was looking. I felt that moment it knew. Something shifted in the quality of the stillness, like everything in the room decided to listen. My body stood up. I say it that way because I didn't decide to stand up. My legs decided. I was vertical before I'd finished a thought, across the room in 3 steps, with my hand on Denny's bed rail. I was shaking, not trembling, shaking the way you shake when your body tries to use up something it produced too much of. I did not look back at the door. I pressed the nurse call button once, twice, then stood with my hand on the bed rail and my back to the patio door. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, until I heard footsteps in the hallway and the soft sole drag of Petra's left shoe. The door opened and light came in. "Everything all right?" Petra asked, glasses on, reading something. "I thought I heard something outside," I said, my voice flat and controlled. "On the patio, I thought, I don't know. Can you check?" She looked at me a moment, then went to the patio door, pulled the blinds aside and looked out. "Nothing there," she said. Not unkind, just factual. Concrete, planter, railing, black sky. I still haven't told anyone what I actually saw on that patio. I told Petra I was sorry, that I was overtired, that I had probably dreamed it. She nodded like she'd heard this before, brought me a cup of water and left. I sat in the chair next to Denny's bed for the rest of the night, and I didn't go back to the cot. I didn't look at the patio door again. I watched the red light pulse and waited for morning. Morning came, as it always does. The room filled with flat, institutional daylight, and the northerly came by with breakfast. Then he woke up and complained about the eggs, which meant he was fine, which meant everything was fine. He looked at me across his tray and said, "You look terrible. Did you sleep?" "A little," I said. The patio door was just a patio door. The dead shrub in the planter, the bolted plastic chairs, the 3-story drop to the service road. Just a patio. But here's the thing I can't put down. When Petra pulled the blinds aside to check, I watched her hand on the cord. And the blinds, when she let them go and they settled back into place, moved right to left the way they naturally fall when you release them. Right to left. Whatever I'd watched move through them twice in the dark had moved left to right. Against the way they fall, against the way they'd go. If something on the inside had disturbed them, against the air conditioning movement I'd spent 12 days learning. I left Mercyvale 6 days later, when Denny was discharged. I carried the cot back into its cabinet and took the pillow Petra brought me. I left it folded on the chair, stood in the doorway of room 414 for a second, then followed my brother to the elevator. The vertical blinds were still. The patio beyond them was empty and bright in the morning sun. I looked anyway. I don't know what I was looking for, and I don't know if I was hoping it would be there or hoping it wouldn't. Denny's home now. He's doing well. He calls me on Sundays and complains about his physical therapy, and I listen. I'm grateful for every single complaint. But sometimes late, not even late, sometimes just after dark, I think about that room. The red pulse of the monitor, the ceiling tiles, and the specific quality of silence that settled over that patio after the blinds stopped moving. The moment it knew I was looking. I don't know what was on that patio at Mercyvale Medical Center on the 12th night of my brother's stay. I've thought about it from every angle. I've tried every door. They all open onto the same thing. They all open onto the same thing. That stare, fixed and patient, and then the nothing it left behind when it was gone faster than anything living has a right to be. What comes next doesn't move like that. It doesn't run. The next person who reached out to us had a name for what they experienced, or tried to. Marcus. Overnight security. A glass tower on Meridian and 5th. The particular hush of 2 in the morning when a building starts to sound like a body breathing. He knew every noise that place made. He'd catalogued them. Which is why, when line 4 rang and something on the other end of it screamed, not spoke, not asked, screamed, he understood immediately. The sound was coming from a floor that had been empty since 11. You know what that does to a person who has spent 14 months learning to trust a building? The question Marcus couldn't answer afterward wasn't what screamed. It was what had been using line 4 long enough to know it would be picked up. The logbook on my desk had 61 entries in it before anything went wrong that night. 61 names, 61 timestamps, 61 signatures that meant nothing to me until one stopped making sense. I worked the overnight security desk at the Caldwell Tower on the corner of Meridian and 5th, in a city that never really sleeps but goes very, very quiet between 2 and 4 in the morning. Quiet in a particular way, the kind where you can hear the HVAC system cycling through its phases, where you start to catalog the sounds by heart. My name is Marcus. I mention that only because what happened that night made me feel like someone had peeled that name off me and handed it to a stranger. I'd been at Caldwell for about 14 months by then. Overnight, Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 7. I knew the building the way you know a place when you've spent hundreds of hours alone inside it. I knew the camera on the 14th floor had a ghost pixel in the upper left corner that looked like a floating cigarette ember if you caught it wrong. I knew the elevator on the south bank would skip the 7th floor on its way down if you didn't hold the button for a full 2 seconds. I knew Dr. Neka Abar on the 22nd floor kept the same hours I did. I could see her window lit up on the exterior monitor most nights. The desk itself was a half circle of laminate and steel, bolted to the marble floor about 15 feet inside the main entrance. 2 monitors on the left showed the camera feeds, cycling through 38 interior angles on a 12-second rotation. 1 monitor on the right showed the access log, elevator activity, and environmental sensors. There was a logbook, actual paper, actual pen, because the building manager, a man named Gerald Fitch, believed in redundancy. And my coffee, always a thermos from home, because the break room machine made something that tasted like it had given up on being coffee. My routine was simple. Sign-in checks every hour on the hour, camera sweep every 30 minutes, exterior walk at 2 a.m., log everything, and stay awake. That last one was the hardest some nights. That particular Wednesday, or Thursday technically since it was already past midnight, had been perfectly unremarkable for the first 3 hours. A couple from the 9th floor came in around 11:40, laughing about something, nodded at me, took the elevator. A food delivery guy at 12:15 who I had to buzz through, check his ID against the resident's pre-authorization, log him in, log him out 11 minutes later. A FedEx envelope someone had left propped against the exterior door, moved to the package room and logged. Routine, comfortable, the kind of shift where your body settles and your mind floats. I was halfway through a thermos of dark roast and halfway through a mental argument with myself about whether I'd lock my car when she walked in. The door sensor chimed at 1:47 a.m., which I know because I logged it, and I've read that log entry more times than I can count since. She came through the revolving door with the kind of forward momentum that doesn't look like walking so much as barely controlled falling. Coat the color of old brick, oversized wool that swallows a person, dark jeans, white sneakers, and I noticed immediately that the sneakers were dry. It had been raining since around midnight, a steady drizzle, and the lobby floor had a wet smear from the revolving door where everyone who'd come in earlier had tracked it in. Her sneakers left nothing, no water, no trace. I filed that away the way you file things that don't immediately matter. She was somewhere in her mid-30s, I'd guess. Dark hair pulled back neat and then not, a few strands across her face. She was holding her phone in both hands, pressed against her sternum like she was trying to warm it or protect it. She was looking at me with a kind of expression that takes a second to parse, because it's made of too many things at once. Fear, yes, but also something that looked almost like relief. The relief of having found someone, anyone, after a long time of finding no one. She stopped about 4 feet from the desk. She said, "Please tell me you can see me." I looked up from the monitor. I said, "Ma'am, can I help you?" "I need you to tell me you can see me." Her voice was steady, deliberate, like she'd rehearsed staying calm. I told her I could see her. I asked if she was a resident. She shook her head. "I'm not. I was visiting someone on the 18th floor, and something happened and I've been..." She stopped, pressed her lips together, and started again. "I've been in the building for 4 hours and I couldn't find the lobby. I couldn't find the stairs. I kept ending up on floors I'd already been on." I asked her name. She said Renata Voss. I wrote it in the logbook. 1:47 a.m. Renata Voss, non-resident, walk-in. And I watched her watch me write it. Here is where I should tell you what I was thinking, because I think it matters. I was thinking, she's had a bad night. Maybe she'd been drinking, maybe she'd had a fight, maybe she'd wandered around a building she didn't know and worked herself into a state. The Coldwell had 32 floors. The stairwells all looked identical. I'd gotten briefly disoriented in them myself during my first week. I asked her who she'd been visiting on 18. She said a name, Dominic Hale. I pulled up the resident directory on my screen. 18th floor had 4 units, 18A through 18D. No Dominic Hale. I told her that. She stared at me. "He's lived here for 3 years, she said. "I've been here before. I know his unit." I scrolled through the full directory. No Hale anywhere in the building. I told her that too. She looked at her phone. She turned it around and showed me the screen. The text thread showed the name at the top reading Dom, and the most recent message read, "Just buzz when you're downstairs, I'll let you up." The timestamp on that message was 9:14 p.m. I looked at it, then I looked at her. Something small shifted in the room, or maybe it was something in my chest. I couldn't have named it yet. I asked her to have a seat on the bench by the planters while I made a few checks. She sat but didn't put her phone away. She just held it in her lap and watched me with that careful, exhausting calm. I went through the access log for the evening. No one had buzzed in a visitor for 18A, 18B, 18C, or 18D. No visitor had been logged for any 18th floor unit. That was the first thing that didn't fit. I pulled up the camera on the 18th floor corridor. The feed was live. Empty hallway, same taupe carpet, same cream walls, same amber light. I went back 4 hours in the recorded footage to around 9:30, the time she said she arrived, and watched the hallway. No one. No Renata Voss in her brick-colored coat. No door opening. Then I checked the lobby camera, the exterior feed, the revolving door sensor. At 1:47, the door registered an entry. On the lobby camera, I could see myself at the desk, and across from me, the bench, and Renata Voss sitting on it with her phone in her lap. She was on the camera. She was real. I watched myself write in the logbook on the monitor and felt a very specific kind of relief. That was the last clear moment I had that night. That was the last shift I ever signed my name into that logbook without my hand pausing on the pen. I went back to the directory and searched Dominic Hale again. Searched just Hale, searched Dom in the notes field, alternate contacts, and the parking registry. Nothing. I called the building's after-hours management line and left a message. I didn't know what else to do. I walked over to Renata, sat down on the end of the bench, and told her what I'd found, or hadn't found. She listened, didn't look surprised, and said, "I know what you're thinking. I thought the same thing. That I was wrong, that I had the building wrong, that I misread the address." She unlocked her phone and pulled up a photo. Herself and a man in a kitchen, laughing at something off camera. Behind them, through a window, I could see the city skyline from a high floor, and on the wall behind them, a unit number on a small plaque, 18C. I looked at that photo for a long time. I asked her when it was taken. She said 2 months ago. I asked if I could see the man's face more clearly. She zoomed in. Square jaw, mid-40s, a scar through one eyebrow. I had never seen him in the building. I had never seen his name in the logbook. In 14 months, I had never once seen Unit 18C have a visitor or a delivery or a single camera appearance. You know that feeling when you realize you've been holding your breath? That you've been pressing down on something without knowing, and when it finally moves, everything moves with it. I went back to my desk. I called the building's emergency management line, left voicemail when it rang 7 times. Then I took my keycard, walked to the elevator, and went up to 18. The corridor on 18 looked exactly like the camera feed. Taupe carpet, cream walls, amber sconces, the quiet of a floor where everyone is asleep. I walked to 18C, stood in front of the door, raised my hand to knock, and then stopped. There was no unit placard beside it. There was only a small rectangular discoloration in the paint where a mounted plaque should have been. I'd been gone for a while from the look of it, long enough for the paint to have settled into the absence. I knocked anyway. I knocked again and said, "Building security, is anyone there?" Nothing. I used my master keycard, watched the reader go from red to green, and opened the door into a dark unit. I reached in, found the light switch, and turned it on. The unit was empty. Not empty like no one was home. Empty like no one had ever been home. No furniture, no curtains. The kitchen counters bare, the floors bare, and a layer of fine dust on the windowsills. The window faced the city, the same skyline I'd seen in Renata's photo, and I stood in front of it trying to find something that didn't match. Everything matched. The kitchen wall to my left had a small rectangular lighter patch in the paint, the shape and size of a mounted unit plaque. I went back downstairs. Renata was still on the bench. She looked up when the elevator opened, and something in her face, the careful, costly calm, cracked slightly around the edges. I sat down again. I said, "The unit is vacant, has been for a while." She looked at me a long time, then said very quietly, "Where did he go?" I still don't have an answer. I asked if she'd like me to call someone for her, friend, family member, anyone. She shook her head and asked if she could just sit there for a little while. I said yes, went back to the desk, and at 2:13 a.m. did my exterior walk. 8 minutes, ground floor perimeter, everything logged. When I came back in, the bench was empty. The logbook showed her entry, but no exit entry, because she hadn't checked in as a visitor. I don't know when she left. I don't know how I didn't see her go on the cameras. I reviewed the lobby feed later, and there was a gap, a clean, unexplained gap in the recording from 2:09 to 2:14, right when I was outside. Equipment error, probably. Probably. What I found on the camera footage, or didn't find, I still can't explain. The next morning, before I left, I went to the building manager's office and asked Patricia, the day shift coordinator, about Unit 18C. She looked it up without much interest and told me it had been vacant for going on 11 months. The previous tenant had broken his lease and left without notice. I asked the tenant's name. She said, Dominic Hale. I drove home in the grey morning light and sat in my car in front of my building for about 20 minutes before I went inside. I kept turning over what I knew, arranging it, trying to find the configuration that made sense. Renata Voss had come looking for a man who had lived in the building 11 months ago. She had a recent photo of them together in his unit. She had texts from his number sent earlier that same evening. She had been inside that building for 4 hours without appearing on a single camera feed. Except the lobby, except the bench, except the moment she was sitting directly in front of me. She had dry shoes in the rain. I looked up Dominic Hale. I'm not going to tell you everything I found because some of it I'm still not sure I believe. But I found a name that matched, in a city 2 states over, attached to a missing persons report. The photo in the report was low resolution and several years old, but the jaw was right, and the eyebrow scar was right. The report was filed 8 months ago. I never told anyone what I saw on that monitor. The gap in the footage, the dry shoes, what I found when I searched his name. I still work nights, not at Caldwell. I left about 6 weeks after this happened. Told Gerald Fitch I needed a schedule change. I work at a smaller building now, a mid-rise, 12 floors, a desk with one monitor. Quieter, simpler. I still keep a paper logbook. I still sign my name at the start of every shift, and I still write the entries in careful block letters. But sometimes, around 2 in the morning, when the building goes very quiet and the HVAC cycles through its phases and the cameras rotate through their 12-second intervals, sometimes I look at the lobby feed. I think about a woman in a brick-colored coat sitting on a bench with her phone in her lap. I think about how I looked at that feed every night for 14 months and never once wondered about the people who weren't on it. I don't know what happened to Renata Voss. I don't know what she found or didn't find in that building. I don't know what it means that she was there, really, verifiably, documentably there. And I don't know what it means that I can't account for the hours she spent walking floors that had no record of her. What I know is that she asked me, before she said anything else, to tell her I could see her. And I did. I told her I could. I just don't know anymore if that was enough. The lobby monitor went black, and the last thing it held before the screen died was something where the reception desk used to be. Not a shape, not a figure, something that had already learned the room's geometry and was comfortable there. The next story doesn't live in a building. It doesn't have a security desk or a gravel road of precedent to follow. It starts in a kitchen, on a Tuesday night in February, with a chair pulled 3 feet from a table. Nora knows she didn't leave it that way. She lives alone at the end of a gravel road, with rituals tight enough to hold the dark back. And she knows, the way you know things before your brain catches up, that the chair moved without her. What she doesn't know yet is what moved it, or whether whatever did is still deciding what to do next. That question is the one she'll spend the rest of the night trying to answer. It doesn't answer clean. At 11:47 on a Tuesday night in February, I found my kitchen chair pulled 3 feet from the table, and I knew, the way you know things in your stomach, that I had not left it that way. My name is Nora, and I need you to understand something before I go any further. I'm not a person who leaves chairs pulled out. I have rituals, I have systems. And when you live alone in a house at the end of a gravel road with no neighbors visible, rituals are the difference between peace and the other thing. The house belonged to my aunt, and she'd left it to me when she passed in October. I moved in November because I needed somewhere cheap and quiet and far from a life I was trying to stop living. It was old, built in the 40s, my aunt had said, though she'd never been totally sure. And it had that smell of old houses, dry wood and something almost floral. I loved the way afternoon light came through the western windows in long amber panels. I loved the creak of the third stair, which I learned to step over so I wouldn't wake myself with it. I loved the kitchen, small and warm and smelling like the gas burner even when it wasn't on. I made coffee every morning at 7, ate oatmeal with brown sugar and a splash of vanilla, and wrote in a notebook from 9 to noon. In the afternoon I walked the property, 4 acres, mostly field, a tree line at the back, and I was building something. The first wrong thing was the chair. I stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at it, and the chair was pulled out at an angle, like someone had stood up quickly and left it. I told myself I had done it without thinking, pushed it back under the table, checked the back door, locked, and checked the front, locked. I went to bed and I didn't sleep well. The second wrong thing happened 4 days later, when one of my lavender sachets was on my nightstand beside my water glass. I picked it up, smelled it, set it back in the drawer, and told myself I must have moved it in my sleep. After that, I started sleeping with my bedroom door closed and checking the locks twice. By the 3rd week, I had a list, and I wrote every wrongness I noticed, the date, the time, and a description. I noted the chair, the lavender sachet, the back bedroom window found unlocked on a Thursday morning, and the mug appearing on the wrong hook. But I was not dismissing them anymore, so I started testing. Clear tape across the back bedroom door at ankle height. I arranged a row of books on the hallway shelf in a specific order and photographed it on my phone, then measured a glass of water from the edge. The tape was broken on a Saturday, the books were in the same order, and the glass had moved, maybe an inch. I told myself the house settled, because old houses settle, breathe, and sometimes doors drift. I kept the list anyway, even as the smell started in the 4th week. It wasn't bad, that's what made it worse. Almost familiar, like cedar underneath something warm and human, like a body that's been in a room too long. The hallway smell wasn't the closet, and I said out loud to no one, "Who's there?" The house said nothing, and that was the worst part. No creak, no response, just the smell, and then not the smell. I stopped sleeping through the night, and I learned the house's sounds like a language. I heard it on a Friday, a deliberate sound from the back bedroom, like a drawer being opened slowly. I got out of bed, picked up the fireplace poker, and walked down the hallway. The back bedroom door was closed, and I stood with my hand on the knob, poker in the other, thinking, "Open it, Nora. Open it, or you'll never sleep again." I opened it, and the room was empty. The window was closed, the drawer was shut, nothing was out of place, except the smell, stronger here, and the feeling of warmth like it had recently held a body. I stood in the middle of that room and said out loud, voice cracking, "I know you're here. I know something is here." And then I said quieter, almost to myself, "Please, just let me have this. This is all I have." Nothing answered, but the next morning, the red notebook was on the kitchen table, open to the most recent page, centered, like it had been read. I stood in the kitchen in bare feet on cold tile, and something in me finally let go. I'm not going to tell you everything I did that morning, but I screamed, and I searched every room, every closet, every cabinet, the cellar, and the crawl space. I found nothing, no one, and then I threw the back bedroom chair against the wall, hard enough to crack the plaster. I sat on the hallway floor afterward, back against the wall, and cried without dignity, ugly and total. And somewhere in the middle of that, I saw myself. There's a mirror at the end of the hallway, a tall oval in a dark wood frame, and I looked up and saw myself staring back. She was sitting on the floor with the fireplace poker across her knees, hair loose, face wrecked, wearing an expression I can only describe as cornered. In that moment, I understood with clarity that was almost surgical what had happened to me. I moved into a quiet house to escape a life that had become unbearable, and the quiet hadn't been what I needed, it was a container. I sat with it a long time, the most painful thing I have ever felt. Then I got up off the floor and burned the notebook in the fireplace that evening. I watched the red cover curl and blacken, and the pages go orange and then grey, and I dismantled the tape across the door. I deleted the photographs from my phone, the bookshelf, the chair, the glass, and I put the poker back in the living room where it belonged. And then I rebuilt the story, telling myself I'd had a hard few months and my imagination ran away from me. I'm still in the house, and it's been 6 months since that night, and I drink my coffee at 7. I eat my oatmeal right in the mornings and walk the property in the afternoon, but I do not keep a notebook anymore. The back bedroom stays closed, and I told myself it's because I don't need the space, and I'm pretty good at believing the things I tell myself now. But sometimes, not often, just sometimes, I wake at 3 in the morning and the house is breathing around me. I lie there thinking about the mirror, the woman I saw in it, in her expression, and I think she knew something I've since decided not to know. I wonder, sometimes, if she's still down there, waiting for me to look again. It's almost 3 a.m. now, and I keep thinking about a key. Not a metaphor, an actual key, the weight of it, the specific cold of metal that's been sitting in a drawer too long, untouched. The way a locked thing stays locked, not because you lost the key, but because you put it somewhere safe and then forgot what you were protecting. You know that feeling when you're standing right at the edge of something, a room, a decision, a conversation you've been rehearsing for months, and your body just stops? Not fear exactly. Something older than fear. The part of you that learned early that some doors don't open from the inside. Tonight's stories lived in that space. The dream that handed someone exactly what they needed, and they used it. The room in the hospital where the air felt borrowed. The voice on the other end of a line that knew things it shouldn't have known. And the man who hung up, not because he didn't believe it, but because he did. The envelope no one opened. The place no one left. I don't know what to do with any of that. I'm not sure I'm supposed to. What I keep coming back to is this. How many of us are holding something we won't name? Not because it's unspeakable, but because naming it makes it real, and real things have weight. We are already carrying so much. If something from tonight is still sitting with you, if one of these stories touched the edge of something you haven't said out loud yet, leave it in the comments. You don't have to explain it or make it make sense. Just put it there. Someone will read it. I will read it. And if you want to stay, if you want more nights like this one, subscribe. There's more here. There always is. Lock the door on your way out. Or don't. Some of us sleep better leaving it open.